Welcome to the Economic Development and Equity Subcommittee. Today is Wednesday, January 25th, and we will begin. The first item is call to the public. Is there anybody here call to the public? I don't see anybody. Gosh, it's exciting to hear from the public. Item number one is approval of the minutes. Can I have a motion for the approval of minutes in a second?
I move to approve the December 13th, 2022 minutes, and I love that hat behind Yasmin's virtual screen.
I'll give it a second. I am calling in from the assistant principal's office at Fowler. We are here for a spelling thing. So
please make sure you don't expel anybody. Only coming from the teaching background. So I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any nays?
Aye.
Motion carries. Item number 2, business attraction and water conservation. Chris Mackey from Community Economic Development Director will be here, Cynthia Campbell, Water Resource Management Advisor, and Alan Stevens, Deputy City Manager. Welcome.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Thank you for having us here today. You will recall this was a conversation this committee asked for at one of your your later meetings in December, to really have a discussion about economic development and water, and how we partner together with all of our city departments. If you'll hold just one moment, I'm looking for the remote. There it is. I apologize for that. So as we look at Phoenix, we thought we would take you through just for a minute about economic development and all of the hard work that you've accomplished over the last decade in really changing the economy here in Phoenix. As you know, we are one of the largest physical-sized cities in the entire country. By sheer mass, we're just over 500 square miles, about half the size of the state of Rhode Island. 1.7 million in residents and growing, and we have been the fastest growing city of the last 5 years in a row. And of course, we're the 5th largest city in the entire country. I think the next one is one that you should be incredibly proud of yourselves in the dedication and work that you've done. Our unemployment rate is hovering at 3%. You will remember at the beginning of the pandemic, we skyrocketed to 13.9%, and we've worked our way back to 3% today. It's a great place for us to be. The mission of economic development, the reason you keep me and my team around, is to create jobs here in this market. And we focus on 14 employment corridors in this particular area. And at the council's direction, you'll recall, this committee approved our strategic plan at one of your most recent meetings late in 2022. We do focus on business attraction, keeping and helping our existing businesses grow, community development, our international strategies and activities, biosciences, and you can read for yourself on the screen. But I think what's most important about the work that you've accomplished in the last 10 years is the fact that we now have an economy that is incredibly strong. We are no longer we're no longer dependent on growth. We're no longer dependent on which way buildings are built. We actually have an economy that's here, that is sustainable, and is providing great jobs for our citizens. And as we've worked with you over the last decade, and you look at why Phoenix has become such a livable city, it is through your work. It's through that new and modern infrastructure. We're well positioned from a logistics standpoint. You've created a very favorable environment for businesses to grow and thrive. They know you want them here. They are always so pleased at city council meetings when you mention them, or you attend their retention expansion visits, or you've met with one of them and send our team in to help them grow. And of course, as you can imagine, water and natural resources is one of the things that particularly in the last 24 months has come a bit more into the common stream in conversation, which is the conversation we're here to have with you today, and how we can continue to manage our quality, sustainable growth by paying attention to our natural resources. When we look at our job creation, we have very specific targets that we do proactive outreach in. The first is advanced business services. Those are financial institutions, insurance, real estate, other types of projects along that front. Emerging technologies, whether it is in electric vehicles, whether it's in battery, whether it's robotics, whether it is driverless cars, or other technologies that are coming forward today. Of course, international business. We see about 30% of our book of business on the international scale. Who would have ever thought that a decade ago, that we would be the center of international attraction? In manufacturing, everything from food innovation to technology is lumped into manufacturing. On biosciences and healthcare, we've seen our, from research and development, early stage companies, pharmaceutical, to our hospitals, and software, whether it's cybersecurity or other technologies. When we look at the last 5 years, and again, something this council should be extremely proud of, we've added 73,000 jobs in this market in base industry. We don't count service sector jobs, we don't count retail jobs, not because they're not wonderful jobs, it's just you charge us with base industry jobs. But as you look at this, the changes that this council has made, in 2014, the average salary we attracted was $36,000. At the close of business fiscal year 2022, the average salary of a job we attract is $80,000. So livable wages for our citizens, but more importantly, these are companies that have a strong economic multiplier, meaning they bring their job, but then they support the suppliers and the companies that are already here, having new and additional businesses created through that effort. And some of those logos you see coming up in front of you that you have worked diligently with us on to ensure that sustainable, and dare I say, recession-proof economy. Nobody's ever recession-proof, but Phoenix is now more recession-proof than it's ever been in its history. As we look at the book of business, we continue to see, I don't believe the market yet has reset itself coming out of the pandemic. I don't think we'll see that till the end of 23, early 24, for what businesses are going to do. When we look at our business today, we still see about 70% of our business in industrial, and that is really across the board, whether it's in manufacturing, whether it's in robotics, whether it is in logistics or just in time, or whether it is in big pharma, other types of technologies. We've seen incredible announcements along those fronts in 2022. Bio and healthcare continues to be a strong driver, with our hospitals growing, with our research facilities, and our commercial private sector life sciences partners growing. Office is still at about 10%. We've seen as we've seen companies move to teleworking, we are hearing from our companies more significantly in the last 45 days than we've heard in the last 3 years about them bringing the employees back to work. In fact, Nathan and his team will be making an announcement on an office locate very soon.
Councilwoman Stark.
Thank you. Just a quick question. I noticed tourism isn't on there. Does that just kind of take care of itself because of the beauty of the state, or?
Madam Chair, Subcommittee Member Stark, that is not an area that my team is charged with, is on tourism. That is Director Chan and Visit Phoenix's area. And I would argue, no, tourism doesn't take care of itself because of the beauty of this state. It takes care of itself because of the outstanding work of our convention center and Visit Phoenix, and in bringing in new conventions, and bringing in new attendees, and bringing in people who've never had the opportunity to see Phoenix the way that they see it today. They do an outstanding job on that front.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It was kind of a leading question, but I know the audience is probably wondering, where's tourism, especially with the Super Bowl around the corner. So thanks for clarifying that.
Thank you very much. As we look at our legacy sectors here in Arizona, it's really mirrored that across the United States. In the 1940s, 1950s, 1960s, our federal delegation moved mountains to change the economy of Phoenix from being one that was really locally focused into a federally focused economy. Following World War II, Federal installations and technology were not allowed to be on a coast where they could be easily attacked. And our federal delegation went after that significantly, locating companies like Aircraft Gear and Allied Signal and Motorola and other technology and defense-related companies here, which exploded the economy that existed here in Phoenix. I would argue, as we've talked about, we lost our way a little bit in the 90s and the early 2000s. We were growing so quickly that we started paying attention more towards call center jobs, towards those jobs that were significant, maybe a little lower paying than we'd seen in other areas. And over the last decade, under Council's leadership, we've rectified that. We now have a very dispersed economy. But as Council's given us guidance and direction, looking at those new industry sectors, we don't want to go back to the time when we're a follower and not a leader. And Council's direction now is in smart mobility, it's in new pharma, it's in space, it's in robotics, it's in AV and AR. Not to say that we're not focusing on the other areas, absolutely we are, but we're always, what is it that Wayne Gretzky said, we're skating to where the puck's going to go so that we don't fall behind in making sure that Phoenix continues to remain a competitor in attracting sustainable knowledge economy jobs that mirror well to our community college and universities.
Chris, I have a question about smart city. Where are we in that space of a smart city? Because we have been talking about smart cities, I want to say, for 5 years, 6 years. And when you say it's a new industry sector, what does that mean? Can you break that down for me?
Madam Chair, absolutely. So as we look at, and I will agree with you, so many cities across the country say the word smart city, and I don't think they all know exactly what that means from an economic development standpoint to be able to use it as an attractions. So as we look at smart cities, we look at opportunities for where we can use our technologies, we can use our infrastructure to add value to requests for proposals we're taking out. As an example, we might be taking out a street light request for proposal to replace our street lights. Well, from a smart city standpoint, we should be working with the innovation team and economic development to look what other infrastructure could we partner with to stand up, air counts, air pollen counts, air quality counts that are on top of those traffic signals. They can be used for, Madam Chair, much to your personal passion, to solve the digital divide. How do you put repeaters on the top of those? At no cost to the city, that's now something that we require in our request for proposals to be able to make these the ability to move forward. So as we look at the smart city, we are looking at ways we can leverage our old ways of doing things and bring them into a new technology where they benefit our citizens to the greatest opportunity. Where we're at in our smart cities application, City Manager has stood up a team, our innovation team, that is moving forward with really taking the smart cities opportunities out farther. I know that City Manager Barton, as you look at the plan that he has dispersed to the directors of things that he wants to accomplish in the next 24 months, bringing us all together, all the departments together to leverage how can we work more closely together with needs that we have and leveraging RFPs others may bring out to augment and further the ability to connect together in a smart city way.
I have one more question. In hearing that, there are probably several RFPs that we have approved. So at what point do the departments work collaboratively to make sure we're hitting all the boxes, I guess, I'll use that term, or benchmarks, being included in the RFP? Because do we have a standard space in the RFP where these following items have to be embedded in order for it to go out of the city?
Madam Chair, that's an outstanding question, and that was exactly what City Manager Barton posed to all of the directors in December, was to be able to say, we need to have this language and these departments working together.
Yeah, Councilwoman Pastor, if I can just add to that, the city manager has, as part of this group, focused us on making sure that as the RFPs are coming forward, we're reviewing them and discussing about what technologies might be available to do some of the things that Chris is talking about. So that is in process as we are moving forward, but because of some of the importance of the RFPs, we're not slowing some down because there's lots of other items the city needs to address, but we are actively working in that area.
Okay, I appreciate that. I'm just saying because pretty much where a smart city gets concentrated on, I guess the first phase, I think would be downtown, but really where we need to add, I guess what I would call black fiber, see, I'm learning, and be able to leverage what we have really needs to happen outside of the core, the central core, and needs to expand out because there is no connectivity. And that's what we learned in the digital divide. And so that's where that's why I'm thinking this through as we're speaking. How do we make the smart city not in the inner core, but outside?
Madam Chair, that's exactly where we need to go to bring it into all of the city where there's needs and demands. Because you're right, the easy place to do it is in this 2 square mile area of downtown Phoenix where that technology exists, but being able to leverage that fiber and being able to move into those other areas and pull into the city, I know I would agree with you completely as we continue to move forward and drive the city that we want that is equitable to all of our citizens. That is going to be critical to those areas.
Appreciate it.
Next with me as Deputy City Manager Stevenson said is Cynthia Campbell, and we're going to discuss with you kind of that ever-changing landscape and how we keep growing this sustainable city that we want while really focusing on that sustainable future. Cynthia?
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Just to give you an idea, when we start this conversation about water and growth, it's a good idea to just kind of refresh with a graphic that I'm sure you're very familiar with, but just to kind of put things in perspective. This graph shows how the city of Phoenix uses its water portfolio on an annual basis. So where does the water in the taps in Phoenix come from? And again, we'd stress that, almost 60% of the water that's used in Phoenix comes from the Salt and Verde rivers. Right now, the Salt and Verde rivers are very robust. They are actually, with the recent rain and snowpack, very healthy right now and very sustainable. In addition to that, we use about 2% groundwater, which is not a representation of how much groundwater is available to the city of Phoenix, but rather our conscious choice to limit our use of that as it is a finite resource. But it could be potentially expanded beyond the 2%. So that leaves 40% of our water supply that comes currently from the Colorado River, and that serves areas of Phoenix that are also happen to have a fairly significant intersect with our growth areas. So this graph shows who uses water really in the city of Phoenix currently. And if you look at this graph, you can see that about half of the water use in the city of Phoenix comes from residential properties, whether it's indoor use or outdoor use. They're about 50% of what we use in the city. And so the commercial, industrial, and institutional, or CII that we refer to, is a piece, but it's not anywhere near the largest piece. So to date, I would say in the context of this conversation, so far, water has not been a significant limitation to business attraction in Phoenix. In fact, it's been probably, I would argue, a boon because, one, we have had a robust and diverse portfolio for many years that was carefully crafted by the city, carefully invested by the city to be larger than we needed. Two, about half of Phoenix water use comes from single-family accounts. So business use, industrial use, commercial use is never accounted for a very large proportion of the water consumption in the city of Phoenix. And then three, Phoenix has not historically attracted large water user businesses or industries. And for purposes of the conversation today, we'll say large water user is defined as a business or industry that uses more than 250,000 gallons per day. As a matter of perspective, currently in Phoenix, we have approximately in the neighborhood of about 20 some odd users who meet that criteria, who rise to that level of what we would call large water user. We also, in some of the conversations we've been having more recently, had a subcategory of that to be water users that use over 500,000 500,000 gallons per day. You have to excuse me, I'm used to talking in acre feet, and now we're talking in million gallons per day. But when you talk about the gallons used per day in the 500,000 level, that's an even smaller group, very few users currently in the city of Phoenix. So all of these have been, a situation where our existing water users are very small portion, existing large water users, are a very small portion of our current demand. But where it's changing, where the alteration is coming, is that we've been experiencing, as you know, Colorado River shortages, and those are going to increase, and I expect in 2024 we're going to see a Colorado River shortage in central Arizona like we've never seen before, and one we frankly did not anticipate prior to 2021 because it wasn't even contemplated by the federal government or the 7 basin states that agree on the use of Colorado River water. This will cause a reevaluation of how we look at water, just because we're going to be a little closer to a margin than we've ever been before. But in looking at how we've addressed this, we've come up with a strategy for how to do this. And so this is a multi-pronged strategy, and all prongs are equally important. It's not a do this first and then try that second. It's all of the above all the time. So our first strategy is to deploy existing alternate water resources. And what that means is there's some resources that we have in the Salton Verde that we currently don't use on a year-over-year basis. So we would put those into play. And that's why the City Council adopted the drought pipeline and spent $300 million to build the drought pipeline to move water where it could be better used in North Phoenix from those alternate water supplies. 2, we need to improve efficiency in our current water use, our current water users. You could call that water conservation, you could call that demand management. But we need to become more efficient with our current users, both residential and commercial. 3, we need to implement sustainable development policies. And as some of you know, because you're members of the CCI committee and TIP as well, we have talked to both of those committees about upcoming policies, and Deputy City Manager Stevenson is going to talk a little bit about that more after I'm finished. But that's an important policy, and that addresses upcoming uses, new development, whether it's residential or commercial or industrial. And then finally, the last prong to getting back to a place where we feel more comfortable is to rebuild our robust portfolio. And there are a number of things that are going to go into that. This takes time. Advanced water purification, we're looking very strongly at that, especially as we can be a regional solution. A Bartlett Dam expansion, tribal partnerships that could bring additional water to Phoenix, and then other new sources. And you've heard about these in the news, things like desalinization. There's nothing that's off the table, but I should reiterate that all of these things take time. And so there might be a very short amount of time when we really have to push hard on the other 3 while we work on the 4th. But all of these have to be in play. Implementing sustainable development policies includes the potential for addressing large water users, especially as we're anticipating industrial customers with larger water profiles. We have to look carefully at those and make sure that they balance out what's available at the time with the economic benefit that they provide to the city. So this just
I want to stop you there.
Yes, ma'am.
deploy of existing alternative water resources. You talked about the pipeline.
Yes.
And the purpose of the pipeline was because there was no infrastructure to move the water north. And I believe we, as a council, had to put an additional fee or had to raise the rates for that. Am I correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So that is happening, and we grew to the north because that's where the land was and that's where we were going to start to build our Phoenix. But what we didn't do is build the pipeline. So now we're in the space of doing that. And what we have to do is move water from here or south or wherever the water is being stored to move it up there in order for the new growth. Am I correct or not?
Madam Chair, I would point out that it's not just new growth, it's existing users. The pipeline was not built to serve, it would be encompassing of additional growth, but it was meant to serve existing customers who might be impacted from a loss of supplies from the Colorado River that they currently access.
Right, right. But we're having to move our city water north because of what we built. Not necessarily, I'm saying growth, not today's growth, I'm saying past growth.
That's correct.
Whatever, and maybe I should change the language. What was established, the established areas of housing and the market and businesses, we did not build the infrastructure to be able to move the water to where the existing growth is. In addition, we are growing. So I just want to make sure I'm correct at how I'm thinking this through.
Madam Chair, that is correct. The reason we didn't build the infrastructure was because we had a very reliable water source that was more than ample in Colorado River and the Central Arizona Project. And of course, that ran right through that northern area, and we took it directly from the canal.
Right. And because there's loss of it, or we're not regaining any new water, that's the situation we're in today. And that's how we're solving. And that's how we're solving the water crisis in the sense, and I say crisis, but the movement of water in that sense. So I just want to put that on the record because people need to know how we're moving things and where we're moving the water. Then number 2, water conservation, which I served as a co-chair on that, and I know we're moving on it. The dynamics that I have, and I've had that during the water conservation conversation, was we need to move faster, and we need to move fast and furious for not only my generation and the older generation, because I really think the baby boomer generation knows how to conserve. It's probably my generation and ones behind me that need to understand the importance of conservation. I would say especially the generation, I can't remember I don't know if it's Z, my kids' generation of understanding the importance of water, because they're not getting that education within the schools. So, and what I mean is, when I went, it was part of our curriculum. It was embedded. So I'd say my kids' generation, they understand it, but they don't understand it. I got schooled in turn off the water, turn off everything. I also got schooled by my grandparents who were very conservative and saying, turn off electricity, every leak you got to fix. So I had that generation to mentor me. And so I think water conservation is critical to how we're going to save ourselves for the future, at least, right now. And then the policies, we are moving on the policies. I just think sometimes the policies need to be a little bit more, I don't know what the term is, be able to close in and really close those gaps and not leave it as flexible. But I understand why we do what we do. My concern, and in tribal partnership, rebuild robust portfolio. In that, I know that I have been in several conversations about tribal partnership, but I also been in conversation of how Phoenix can help. I believe it's Lake Mead, and how Phoenix becomes partners with the tribal partnership. So I think at a certain point, we're all going to be have to really, really work together for Arizona, and not just Phoenix, but for Arizona. So my piece in all of this is that we have to come up with some way, some policy as to what we're looking at in the sense of the water usage and how does that look, what does that look like? And not hurt ourselves in not being able to attract certain businesses that have high water usage. What is that balance? And that's really why I wanted the presentation. But in this, I just wanted to stop because I think it's an important piece for everybody just to kind of take in and understand why we're moving the way we're moving and how we're going to do it and or what we've done. So that's why I just wanted to say some appreciation and gratitude towards that, because it's hard, and we're going to have to get a little bit more stringent on the way we move on some of our policies. So I really appreciate it, and I will let you finish your slides.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman Pastor. What the last point I was going to make before turning this over to Deputy City Manager Stevenson is that for many, many years, economic development and water have worked closely together in planning growth in the city of Phoenix and making sure that it's sustainable. And in the past, that's primarily been a focus on making sure that infrastructure was in place to serve new growth and making sure that it was, the timing was right, et cetera. We usually didn't have to think as much about the resource issues, frankly, because the city had built such a robust portfolio. But what we look forward to as we go forward in this, a slightly more pinched point in time is that we think that really a lot of this, in addition to pursuing this strategy, this multi-pronged strategy, but also really leaning in on the existing collaboration between CED and water services. So we are really paying closer attention on a case-by-case basis to the available water resources and how they apply to whatever the specific growth area or industry is being discussed. And so we think that that's very doable because we already have a long track record of doing that. It's just a function of being in a closer collaboration early on, so we make sure that we're looking at smart decisions, because smart growth is absolutely possible in Phoenix. That's what we've always been striving for, and that's certainly available today. So with that, I'll turn this over to Deputy City Manager Stevenson to finish up.
Thank you, Cynthia. Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee. So you can look here on the next slide as we talk about 150 years of planning, and really what the city has looked at since we first became a city. We've always been, all the forefathers knew we wanted to grow. That was not a secret. It's why when Chris shows you that slide, we're 517 square miles, because we've always known that growth was what we wanted to do in this city. And in order to be able to do that, you needed to plan for it in a wise and smart manner. And that means you've got to have a whole host of policies related to how that happens, and those are encapsulated in the general plan because there are goals in there that relate to economic development, water resource planning, housing. All of those things are tied together in the general plan, and that guides that future development of the city, so that as the city is growing, whether it's up north like we were just discussing, or down south along the Loop 202, or out to the west along the Loop 101 freeway, all of those are new growth corridors for the city. where we have been planning for growth and development a long time, and that includes jobs as well as making sure that we have adequate water to serve all of those areas. And so a bedrock principle that the mayor and council have always established is that we need to balance our water use and economic development opportunities along with fiscal responsibility to ensure that we are looking at the short-term impacts of what a economic impact may be, as well as the long-term impacts on new growth and development related to our water resources. And trying to work towards that balance is really the art and science of what we do all the time here as city staff, at the direction of the mayor and council. The Planning Development Department, in terms of our role with this, is really in working with both water and CED from the planning, zoning, and all the development aspects that are helping implement the economic development plan, the water resources plan, the water drought management plan. All of those things have elements that the Planning Development Department works on trying to make happen to live up to the commitments that the city makes as a whole related to finding that balance. Overall, the department also works on the back end as we are looking at construction projects, and as those are getting built, that make sure that we're continuing to build the great city that the mayor and council have directed us to do, and capturing that private investment, but also making sure that we have those water resources for existing users, and we're not shortchanging existing users potentially for future growth. It's about balancing those aspects of it and making sure that we have the economic, vitality to continue to attract jobs and attract investment into the city, but at the same time making sure that we are doing what we've always have done, which is plan wisely for how we have our water resources used and deployed throughout the city. So as you all know, we have been working jointly with the Water Department and CED and Planning Development Department on a sustainable development policy as it relates to water use. And so that item will come up to the full council for policy adoption here in February. And as part of that, once we hope to get it adopted, phase one will be developing and implementing stipulations for rezoning cases, as well as working on the large water user policy, which is more the focus of what we are talking about here today. And so those will be the first items that we will bring forward, and using the stipulations as an overall barometer to work on how we would implement, water changes from new development to ensure that what's getting put into new homes and new businesses is as efficient as possible. And our large water user policy would really focus on those users, as Cynthia stated, that are above the 250,000 gallons a day, and looking at how to ensure that they're as efficient as possible, and evaluating that efficiency as it relates to the economic impacts that they would bring to the city in jobs creation and those other types of CED elements. And so phase two would be working on updating the codes, ordinances, and processes citywide, and looking at how we would deploy those for different types of development, from single-family residential all the way up to the really large water users. All of those will take place in the context of significant discussion with stakeholders who are involved in all the various aspects of development, as well as water conservation side of things, and any of our citizen groups who wish to participate. And then those will eventually in phase two be brought forward to the city council for adoption on specific codes and ordinances. With that, we are happy to answer any questions.
Councilwoman Stark.
Thank you. We had a conversation at the Transportation, Infrastructure, and Planning Subcommittee about the steps we're going to take with regards to new development. And during our discussion, we talked about existing development, and I know you're going to come back to that particular subcommittee, but it might warrant a discussion here as well, because anything that we do with regards to current development may have an impact on economic development. So I really appreciate this report. I know you're very thoughtful in what you're trying to do with regards to water policy, but I think that might be warranted in the future as well.
Perfect. That's our future agenda, one of our future agenda items. Councilwoman Ansari.
Thank you so much. First of all, I do want to highlight and commend the great work that our city is doing. And I know that it is clear from the presentation, but all the work that I've witnessed, that we are being water conscious and planning ahead. Couple of questions about some of the last pieces, Alan, that you just talked about. My first question is around timeline. You said phase one is focused on stipulations and a large water user policy. Can you tell us a little bit about how this has been going and what responses we have seen so far?
Thank you, Madam Chair, Councilman Ansari. We have been meeting internally with the Water Department as it relates to stipulations, and we've had a couple of internal meetings with Water Department and Economic Development Department regarding developing the large water user policy. And I would anticipate that the large water user policy and the stipulations we would have in terms of a draft form to start some discussions with available in the next month or so to start talking and working through those issues. It will be, ongoing and evolving as we have some of those discussions. They won't be, here's staff putting out a final draft. It would be staff putting out information to then start the discussion with the public and stakeholders and the mayor and council.
Okay, and if that is about a month out, when do we foresee implementing phase two?
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, phase two would be somewhat dependent upon adoption of the stipulations and the zoning cases and how those are going, because the intent with phase one is to use those zoning cases as test pilots to apply the different stipulations and see how those get adopted by the mayor and council, how the private development community is working and adjusting to those things from a development perspective. So again, that we can try and balance. In the case of large water users, it's obviously economic development opportunities, but in the case of residential, you're talking about housing affordability issues. And so trying to find that balance of how those stipulations would apply on individual projects is going to be what we'll have to work towards. And then I would anticipate that that's probably at least several months away, probably the fall, before we would at least be ready to start a conversation about more of those ordinance changes, because we want to see how they can be implemented from a rezoning case level to evaluate the impacts on different projects and talk through those with different development community stakeholders so we could get a good handle on the costs. What if we're talking about integrating these items with Water Department and Ms. Campbell's team, what we would be doing is having them be a part of zoning cases to evaluate and provide some input onto, okay, if this is your development project, for example, we had a couple of projects up north that in the summer we applied some of these stipulations to, and those are very site specific and context specific, and so we need to go through and work on those and then see how they can apply to ensure how much water we're getting saved and what we're doing in that regard versus the costs that would be applied and what that would ultimately do to either a development project and as it relates to housing affordability or impacts to an economic development project. That's really that balancing part of, we do that with the stipulations.
Okay, that's very helpful. I think my next question is for Cynthia, and Alan, you may have some to add, but Cynthia, the presentation on your piece mentioned that single family outdoor was the largest water usage source. I assume that means, individual yards, landscaping, pools, etc.
Madam Chair, Councilwoman Ansari, yes, it does. Single family home outdoor use is basically involving what is outside your house, whether it's grass or xeriscape or a pool. It's your outdoor water use, and that is probably the one place that we want to do the most work in terms of water conservation. And really, I want to point out efficiency. It's not so much what people have in the ground; it's how they're watering it or overwatering it is really more the issue.
Yeah. And that's an area that I'm very interested in. I think that being the largest source. And then you mentioned just single family residential being a significant source as well. I think, I'm curious about what ideas you have on this front when it comes to efficiency. And I think we've talked in different forums around, the importance of density in our city, the importance of, thinking a little bit differently about how we build instead of building out and extending the sprawl of the valley, building upward and the benefits that that brings. And I would just say, I think from an urgency perspective, I consider this to be one of the most urgent things we can do to, shape our policy and start changing how we are developing and building. And, when you talk about generations, I think there's no question that our older generations have done a great job conserving water. But when you look at any sort of data from what younger generations, millennials, Gen Z care about, climate change and sustainability is usually the number one issue. And so I think that should be something that if we want to continue to not only sustain our own future, but also continue to be, that balance that Alan talked about, that bedrock principle between water use, economic development, and opportunities. If we want to be attractive to young talent, then sustainability should be at the forefront. So I know you're already working towards that, but I think the timeline that you mentioned, Alan, is sounds pretty good, but I just want to make sure we don't get off track in making the changes that we need to make when it comes to our water usage. Thank you.
Thank you. Alan, I'm going to piggyback on Councilwoman Ansari, or Vice Mayor, actually, sorry. I got to get that in my brain. Vice Mayor Ansari, is phase one, is that within the next 6 months? Is that within a year? I need some concrete timeline.
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, the phase one discussion that I talked about was starting to have discussions with stakeholders in about a month or so. So we would be working through some of the steps that we have already put together. I mentioned some ones that were used previously, and taking those ones along with other ones and putting them together to start that dialogue with some of the stakeholder groups so that we can start working through exactly what that language is, how we would implement that, what does it mean, so that the development community can understand if we say this is what they have to do and what that means. And those are all discussions that have to take place so that then we could have the STIPs be in a place where we could then start applying them. I think we're okay with starting to apply some of them in a more ad hoc manner sooner rather than later. As I said, we've applied some already to projects, and we'll continue to do so. But in terms of getting the STIPs in a format where everyone knows and understands, and then being able to apply those, we're about a month away from having some discussions with stakeholders, and then it'll be dependent upon working through the issues with them to completely finalize that. But certainly if there are projects that are coming forward from a rezoning perspective that the council wishes to have us apply them on, we can do that because it's an individual rezoning case that comes before you that, as you know, we are talking to you about that case, along the way. And then the second part of that is the large water user policy, and we have had fairly robust discussions with CED and the Water Department on that, and so I think we would be ready to go out and have more of a draft discussion in probably about another month as well on that one, because we have a draft that we're still finalizing, but we're getting to a point where staff is okay with that draft to say, all right, let's get some stakeholder input on it.
Okay, so I'm just going to narrow it in. From February to July is 6 months. We have our last meeting in 6 months before we go on break. Do you think we can accomplish that?
So, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, I think we can certainly do our part to have the information available and have discussions about it. Getting it adopted by council in terms of the large water user policy, I think we can work towards that, but ultimately that's up to the mayor and council and working through the issues with the stakeholders.
So do you think that by June you could come back to this committee with all the information, be able for us to hear it, and then from there we could possibly go in July for a piece, or then we know when we come back in August or September that we're going to vote on that or have a discussion or have a policy session? I know that there's several areas in our calendar that we could put in a policy area this piece. So I'm hoping that we can have this discussion and move quickly. So then if it happens in July, then we can move, you guys or staff can move on the updates to codes and things like that, so that then we're ready to go. I'm trying to now give a timeline, know what's out there, and move, because we had this discussion yesterday on the yellow light. I think as a council, we're going to have to start saying, here's the timeline, and then fit, if it works with us, and do some negotiations as to how we're going to start to move some policy.
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, I think we can work with that
Okay.
timeline to certainly have at least some of it ready for public discussion and adoption via this body in June. We'll have to work through the issues with stakeholders to know exactly what parts of that to go forward with, but we can certainly give a complete update and then be ready to move some of it forward.
Okay, thank you. Now, I kept hearing about cost, and this is something, I'm going to be one of my constituents that emails me every day and tells me what I need to do, and I'm going to be, and it's not just one, it's several, and some of their comments is about cost, and what they say is we sacrifice some of the things or policies because of cost, because it's going to cost too much. I think one of the things we have to look at, especially water, is that we won't get it back, and we need it. And so when we talk about costs, we're actually really, in this piece of policy, doing something that we can save something or have it. And so I think we have to really look at that piece. Because when you start to say cost, people then react and become very defensive. And water is something that I would say is precious. And so if we can have a larger discussion with development community, because development community understands that, and development community understands that we need to do something, and they want to help. And it may cost a little bit more. And how then how is the incentive if we do this, what incentive do we provide development? And I think that's what you were trying to say, that it's a fine balance.
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, yes, you're absolutely right. That is, what I'm talking about in terms of trying to find that balance where we are making sure that, for example, there's lots of new technologies coming out all the time as it relates to water conservation, and some of those ones are, technology that's more widely available and it's more reliable and cheaper, and it's applying those ones versus a best in class that just came out but costs 5 times as much and no one really knows how that works, and saying we're going to make you pay for the top of the line every time, and we don't know that works. And that's about striking that balance and trying to figure out how we would apply those while making sure that we are not being too much of inhibiting private investment and them wanting to build housing within the city or build projects for industrial development or large water users as well.
Okay, so we're going to have to combat also, because I read a Time article. Arizona faces an existential dilemma: import water or end its housing boom. So if we end a housing boom, that also hits our economic development in attracting businesses. So that's why we're having such a lively discussion on this, because these are the balances, and we're being proactive. What I love is that we've been proactive, and we're being proactive and continue to be, and we're thought thinkers in doing this. And so this is, you're the experts at this. I just say, can we do this? Can we not do this? And you're the experts in following this piece. I also heard that we may be, or read another article regarding Rocky Point. I think it's the Sea of Cortez, and doing a partnership with them. So there's a lot of innovative ways that we're trying to solve this problem. So I just want to, I don't think, Councilwoman O'Brien, do you have any questions before I end this segment? Or this item?
I do, Chairwoman.
You do?
Hello? Yes,
Yes.
thank
Okay,
you.
go ahead.
Thank you. Cynthia, first of all, thank all of you for this presentation. I do appreciate it. Cynthia, on the strategic water planning items, I don't know where it might fall, but can you talk a little bit about the need to be able to recycle our water and what we're waiting for in terms from the state?
Madam Chair, Councilwoman O'Brien, what you're referring to is what we are calling advanced water purification. It was on that list of, in the strategic slide that I showed, it was in the list of augmentation measures, measures that would provide us additional water resources. And yes, that is something that Water Services is looking very closely at as not only a potential solution, not the solution, because there is no one silver bullet. I need to be really clear about that. There is no one new water source that's going to solve every problem and every level of shortage that we're talking about. It's going to have to be a combination of a number of things. But it is a very important one to us because this is water that we currently already have. It's wastewater that we convert back to drinking water. And we have a very unique opportunity to assist on a regional level in the Valley, which helps in not only Phoenix, but also our neighboring communities, because to Chairman Pastor's point about the national articles, you know, they always manage to use the word Phoenix somewhere in the article, even if the specific instance that they're speaking about is not only not in Phoenix, sometimes it's not even in Maricopa County. But Phoenix always gets mentioned. And so it is very important to Phoenix that all of our sister cities, especially in the Valley, maintain some level of sustainability at least. And to the extent that we can do that as part of something we were already going to do would be very helpful. But what we are waiting for, to your point, Councilwoman O'Brien, from the state, is we're waiting for the State Department of Environmental Quality to enact rules that provide the specific standards for how an advanced water treatment plant would get built. And so that's very, very important to us. And we pushed forward a bill last year through the legislature that puts a burden on ADEQ to do those rules by next year so we can be ready to go as we start to put together the plans for that type of facility. And also we might be looking to the state as well for funding, because it is a very expensive endeavor to do. So that is also something we'll be looking for the state to help us with potentially.
Thank you for the additional information on that, Cynthia. And so given that they have a deadline of next year, will our city plans be as ready as they can possibly be to go when we get that information from the state?
Chairwoman Pastor, Councilmember O'Brien, I believe that will be the case. I know that I only say that in the sense of I believe that, not because I'm not sure it would be ready, but more that is a question that the Water Services Director is working on, but is my understanding that yes, we will be ready.
Wonderful, I appreciate that. And I would also echo my fellow committee members and especially Vice Mayor, and sorry about the use of our single residents for outside water and developing some education information and ways to get them to reuse or reduce the use of that water. Ever since I've been on the council, water has been at the forefront, and I appreciate, Cynthia, all of your education and work that you're doing, as well as the other departments, Alan and Chris. Thank you so much. Thank you, Chairwoman.
Thank you. One item, and then Alan, you want to say something. Can we look at Chandler's policy in this whole process?
Yes, Madam Chair, we can look at what Chandler has done.
Thank you.
The final comment that I would add is thank you for bringing up the Time article and that national press coverage that is out there in the cutthroat world of economic development that Chris deals with every day. All those impressions matter at that national level, and it's unfortunate that as Ms. Campbell stated, we get painted with a broad brush of, well, Phoenix is running out of water and lumped into things that aren't at all true. I think the thing that we have to continue to emphasize and restate is that in Arizona and in Phoenix, because we've always wanted to grow, we knew that we had to manage our water resources wisely, because that's what we have been out there promoting for 150 years, to get people to invest and come live in the desert. Otherwise, they weren't coming. You couldn't just see, rain every other day, and that's why we're here, or a port city, or those things. They came because we had the foresight to work to develop an economy that is based upon having great sunshine and great water management. And that's what we are seeking to do right now, is to continue to be leaders in water management that we've done at the statewide and city level here throughout the country far sooner than other cities have done. And I won't throw any of them under the bus, but there are a lot of other states and cities that have not done what we have done as it relates to water management and are looking at it now. And it's because of that foresight that we are here today working with you guys to manage this in a sustainable and smart manner that allows us to balance economic opportunities and water resource conservation.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Continue the good work. Item number 3, Super Bowl 57, Public Safety Planning Update.
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, we've got Mr. Chen and his team with a lot of outside folks as well involved in this, and so I will let him kick it off and introduce our speakers.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the subcommittee. We are just 18 days away from Super Bowl Sunday. Our teams are making their final preparation in advance of hosting the big game. In fact, the build-out for the outdoor fan event at Margaret T. Hance Park began last week, and then on Saturday, the fan event at the Convention Center will start its load-in. So with me today at the table, I'd like to introduce Jessica Medford-Miller, CEO of Valley Metro, Devney Marley, President and CEO of Downtown Phoenix, Inc., Commander Brian Lee with the Phoenix Police Department, and Assistant Chief Tim Kreis with Phoenix Fire Department. We're here today to provide you an update on 2 items that we discussed at our last subcommittee meeting, free light rail fares and public safety. So over the past several weeks, we've been working very closely with our partners at Valley Metro, Downtown Phoenix, Inc., and the Arizona Super Bowl Host Committee on a light rail ticket partnership to make light rail fares free for residents and visitors attending Super Bowl events. So today we're pleased to announce that a free light rail fare program available for fans attending the Super Bowl experience at the Phoenix Convention Center, Super Bowl opening night, and the Super Bowl 57 Music Fest, both at Footprint Center, and the Super Bowl experience at Hance Park, including the first ever official Super Bowl watch party. This program is modeled after an existing and successful light rail partnership that Valley Metro has with the Footprint Center and other venues. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jessica to talk about the program and how it will work and the benefits. And then one of the other things that we talked about at our last meeting was the cost. And we've looked at various cost models, and Devney is going to talk about the fundraising component of this to cover the revenue recovery needed for this program.
Thank you, Director Chan. Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the subcommittee. We are pleased to provide you with an update this morning on our proposed or planned light rail ticket partnership. Valley Metro has been working with our partners for a number of months, including the City of Phoenix, the Super Bowl 57 Host Committee, and Downtown Phoenix, Inc., to create an excellent Super Bowl 57 customer experience for residents and visitors across the Valley. Part of that Super Bowl experience is making it easier and more accessible for our residents and visitors to leverage light rail to access Super Bowl events. This sponsored fare program will build on a stronger partnership between light rail and special events and leverage the Valley's investment in transit and high-quality service. Through this partnership, football fans and families attending Super Bowl experience events at the Phoenix Convention Center February 4th and 5th and 9th through 11th, and at the Hants Park from February 9th through 12th, can use their print or electronic event tickets to ride Valley Metro Light Rail at no additional cost. As Director Chan mentions, this program builds upon an existing ticket partnership that we have with Footprint Center that allows all Footprint Center visitors to leverage their ticket to access light rail at no additional cost. And that includes event goers attending the Super Bowl Music Fest from February 9th through 11th. This is one small but I think really important step toward making Super Bowl 57 the most sustainable Super Bowl yet by reducing automobile travel and congestion, not only in downtown Phoenix, but on highways across the Valley, as our 28-mile and 38-station rail system is served by 12 park ride lots in Phoenix, Tempe, and Mesa. This program is only made possible through leadership from the City of Phoenix, including Mayor Gallego, Valley Metro Board Chair and Committee Chair, Councilmember Pastor, and support from the cities of Mesa and Tempe. A special thanks is due to Director Chan and CEO Devney Marley from Downtown Phoenix, Inc. for providing the support, leadership, and of course fundraising, as well as our partners at Super Bowl Host Committee. Thanks in advance, too, to the many Valley Metro team members who have been working and will work very hard to deliver this excellent customer experience. Fans can get a game plan with Valley Metro and learn more about our enhanced service and soon this ticket partnership at valleymetro.org/SB game plan. Now I'll turn it over to Devney.
Wanted to make sure you had a chance to see the great points listed here on slide 4. And good morning, Madam Chair and members of the subcommittee. I have the pleasure of sharing with you today where we are at in terms of the fundraising for this program. As mentioned throughout this presentation, we landed on this ticketed model for a myriad of reasons, and one of them being the feasibility of the funding and the ability to raise the monies needed to provide this program. And through commitments from Community and Economic Development Department, the Convention Center, Visit Phoenix, Downtown Phoenix, Inc., and many companies and universities in downtown, we are nearly to our fundraising goal of about 150 million. Oh my gosh, I'm not on the host committee anymore, my goodness. Gosh, that was 2015, all those fundraising goals we had to hit. I'm sorry, $150,000 to make this program a reality. And our downtown businesses are also great community partners. Many are still considering donations to the program. So while we're confident that we will hit that fundraising goal, we do have a safety net in place where Downtown Phoenix, Inc. is committed to reinvesting non-EMSD assessment revenues that we will generate in the month of February back into this program for any remaining amounts needed.
What does that mean?
Which portion?
The portion
non-EMSD?
that you just, yes.
Through Downtown Phoenix, Inc., specialty event liquor license applications, we generate funds that we reinvest into programs and our people. We also are hosting pop-up retail locations at Arizona Center for the week of Super Bowl activities, and there's a little bit skin in the game from our small retailers who will be participating in that program with us. About 5 to 10% of their revenue generated through the opportunity will come back to Downtown Phoenix, Inc. that we can then also reinvest in this program. We are providing all temporary improvements, all parking, all signage, all advertising needed for that pop-up retail activation. So going into that program, there are no costs to the businesses who are joining us in the effort.
Thank you.
So, Madam Chair, this is the end of the light rail piece of the presentation. Before we move on to public safety, we'd be happy to entertain any questions from the subcommittee members about this light rail program.
Okay, so I think I heard the total cost is $150,000.
That's correct.
What have we? What have we raised, or what have you raised, and not we?
Sure. Happy to answer that question. We are at about $130,000 raised, with, again, many, many more asks in the community that are being considered. There's often an approval process that's needed, and I'm hearing positive feedback from a lot of additional companies.
Okay, so we need 20,000 to get there. What's the timeline determining if we are doing this or we're not doing this, or this is just going?
Well, we're fairly confident that we're doing this, and we wouldn't be here if we weren't. And I think,
Okay.
Devney has been working very hard, even, up to last night. She was getting commitments of funding as late as last night, and we will continue to work on that. But this is pretty much breaking news that you are hearing here first at the EDE subcommittee. And I think the next step is that our communications teams will be getting together to start putting out a communications plan for all the attendees.
Okay, the reason why I was asking, because I've been in these dialogues, and last I left it, I think it was last week, was trying to figure out if we were going to do it or if we weren't going to do it, and the timeline, if we were going to do it, what the wraps would be, just another, there are more detailed stuff that everybody doesn't need to know about, but I'm just telling the public there's all these details that go into play in order for this to happen. So that's why I'm asking for an update.
And Madam Chair, just to address that point, because of the businesses in downtown and our universities who have come in at a smaller donor amount, will provide recognition through a press release, through Downtown Phoenix Inc. platforms and opportunities that we identify along the way. But it's not a full-blown corporate sponsorship, which was one of the models that we were pursuing. It instead have changed to this donor model, and there will be less recognition, no wraps needed, no hard costs for deliverables required at this point.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Next item.
Okay, now on to the
Anybody
public
have any
safety.
questions? No.
Thank you, Director Chan. Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee. We were asked to provide an overview of the public safety plan and kind of what the public and the community members can expect to see during the Super Bowl efforts in the downtown area. So over the past year, the police department, along with our partners at the fire department and many of our city departments, have worked together collaboratively to develop a comprehensive public safety plan for the downtown area to support the multiple venues and the events that will be taking place during the week leading up to Super Bowl. So we're here to give just a quick overview of what that might look like. So this is just a list of some of the largest events that we are dealing with, that we're working together to make sure that we have adequate security and staff and planning for these venues. This list has been shown several times. We continue to update specifics as we get them, but to date, right now, this is the most current information. We wanted to include a map of the downtown area, specifically the Phoenix Convention Center, just so that we could show what some of the traffic restrictions might look like. During a lot of the community outreach meetings, traffic is always one of the questions that comes up, and there will be a couple of hard closures that will be put into place, followed by some traffic restrictions that will still allow limited traffic flow. As you can see from this map, Monroe Street will be what's considered a hard closure for us on the north end of the convention center. 5th Street and 2nd Street will have some traffic restrictions, but there will still be traffic flowing. And then we have the 3 stars indicate the main entrances to the convention center area. The map also depicts some of the available parking, some of the locations to catch Valley Metro for public transportation, as well as the location for drop-off and pickup for our rideshare partners. So for the Phoenix Convention Center, to include the Symphony Hall, the police department is going to have uniformed security on the inside as well as the exterior of this facility. We will be assisting with security checkpoints, We will also have police department representation that will be in the Super Bowl Command Center at the Convention Center and will be directly tied into the Tactical Operations Center, which is where the Phoenix Incident Management Team will be monitoring and managing all events taking place within the city of Phoenix. In addition to that, we'll have traffic management that will be taking place on the exterior to assist with ingress and egress, both for pedestrian and vehicular travel. All of that will be overlaid on top of the individual private event security at the Convention Center as well. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to my partner here with the fire department to give an overview of the Phoenix fire staffing.
Thank you, Commander Lee. Chairwoman, Pastor, members of the subcommittee, Tim Kreis, Phoenix Fire Department. For us in this venue, what we have been working on and what we're ready to go with is, first point is there's going to be private EMS providers in this venue, and we work extraordinarily close with those folks. So we will have a command liaison embedded with that private team to respond and react if they need any support on anything. In addition to that, we're going to have a dedicated Phoenix Fire Department rescue to this venue and supplemental EMS and fire response support in the area, as well as special operations personnel. In addition to that, we will have a liaison from the Fire Marshal's office dedicated to this area to support any fire and life safety needs or issues that may arise. And I'll hand it back to Commander Lee.
Thank you, Chief Kreis. So moving on to the Footprint Center, this will be a location that will be hosting several events during this week. As far as the police department staffing, once again, we will have uniformed security inside as well as on the exterior perimeter, providing security for this venue. Again, we will be managing that traffic and vehicular flow to and from the event, as well as how it integrates within some of the surrounding venues that are adjacent to the Footprint Center. Now, the optic for this, you'll see officers that will be in uniform. You'll see some that are in marked patrol vehicles. You'll see some that are assigned to fixed post traffic positions, working lights, assisting with pedestrian flow. You'll see some that are on motorcycles. And we will also have a whole host of civilian and support staff volunteers that will be available to assist in a variety of capacities throughout. And once again, this will all be overlaid on top of the private event security that has already been assigned to the Footprint Center.
And for the fire department, we'll have private EMS providers again inside of the Footprint Center, liaison with the fire department, closely embedded and working with those folks. We'll have supplemental fire EMS response capabilities by way of CART teams downtown, as well as representation from the fire marshal's office and special operations personnel.
So one of the major events that the Super Bowl host committee is sponsoring at Hance Park is going to be the NFL Experience. This map indicates the perimeter, the security perimeter around the affected areas for this event during the Hance Park days of operation. Again, there will be a couple of traffic closures along Moreland Street on the south end of the map, along with 1st and 2nd Street, and this will be to allow for not only pedestrian flow, but for load-in and access for event support staff during the event. Also on the north end of the map, you'll see a closure for 2nd Street, and then west on Culver, just east of the library. Again, this will be to facilitate back-of-house operations for the staff at Hance Park. One of the questions from the community that comes up is, how can I still walk from north to south? Can I still use the park? Keeping in mind this is an open park, it is a free event, but they would have to go through the security screening entrances indicated by the main gate A, gate B star, and then the gate C star. Or they could simply utilize Central Avenue and 3rd Street as north and southbound areas for pedestrian in and egress. Once again, with regard to staffing for Hance Park, the Phoenix Police Department is going to be utilizing uniformed security officers that will be inside the venue. We will also have staff that will be assigned on the exterior of the venue. We will have staff positioned at the entrance and exit gates. And then we will also have staff assigned to the Super Bowl Command Center that will be in direct connectivity once again with the City of Phoenix Incident Management Team. We will have bicycle squads that will be assigned to be able to help interact with the community members and be able to traverse the park more efficiently and effectively. And again, this will also be overlaid on top of the private event security that the Super Bowl host committee has already secured to support this event.
For the fire department associated with Hance Park, we'll have private EMS providers again in and around the park area. We'll have a command liaison embedded with that team, a Phoenix Fire Department rescue that will be dedicated to the area, supplemental PFD, fire and EMS and special operations personnel. What the community will see is firefighters and paramedics on CART teams that are able to quickly get to our customers as needed and to supplement those private EMS providers, and representation from the fire marshal's office.
We wanted to talk about our transit safety and security. As was previously mentioned, the extensive light rail and Valley Metro system that will traverse through the center of downtown Phoenix. We've also enhanced our security presence at these locations as well. These will consist of increased light rail security. They will be both posted at various locations along the route as well as at the platforms, and we will also have additional staff that will actually be on the trains. We are coordinating with the Phoenix Police Transit Unit and the Transportation Safety Administration, and because of the partnerships and the requests that we have made with our local, state, and federal partners, we were able to secure an additional 50 K-9 teams that the TSA is going to be providing to the Valley to support the entire region. So that's a regional support effort. And this also includes 10 TSA, what they call them Viper teams, the Visible Intermodal Protection and Response teams, for enhanced support on the trains and platforms. We utilized these teams for the Super Bowl in 2015. They were a great operational support tool for us, especially at the platforms and along the route. In addition, we're also going to have K-9 security sweeps. It'll be conducted each morning at the rail yard as well as at the 3rd Street platform. And we will have a transit and TSA presence in our Emergency Operations Center, which is going to be at the MAC, which is going to oversee the coordination of all regional support efforts. We're also utilizing several specialty resources on the police department to include things like our bomb squad. For us, public safety as always remains paramount to the success of this event. We were able to also request and receive additional resources from the region as well as out of state and at the federal level by our federal coordinating partners. This includes 117 bomb technicians that will be being brought in from various areas to support the region, 104 additional explosive device K-9 handlers, and we're also going to have continuing ongoing support from local and federal partners, including the FBI, the ATF. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Councilwoman Stark, I didn't see her hand.
Oh, that's okay. Talking about support from local and federal, I'm just curious how you are working with the city of Glendale and Scottsdale. Obviously, Glendale is going to hold the event, but I'm sure Scottsdale is going to have a lot of parties and other events. And I'm just curious about the outreach, and I'm sure you wish we had their real-time crime cameras, but, you know, we're getting there. But have you had a lot of discussions so we're consistent throughout the region?
So, Madam Chair, Councilwoman Stark, and members of the subcommittee, yes, and that's a great question. In fact, that really highlights and showcases the majority of the efforts that we've put into securing a regional support entity for the entire Super Bowl. So when we discuss the Multi-Agency Coordination Center, or we refer to it as the MAC, that is a coordination center that is in place to be able to support not just the city of Phoenix, but resources, personnel, any type of support resource that an agency might have, whether it's a resource like a bomb squad technician or they need an extra helicopter. We have 26 resource work groups that have been identified and that are all comprised as part of the MAC, and each one of them has designated a chair and a co-chair, and they work across the entire region to ensure that when the events start to happen, regardless of whether it's in Phoenix or in Glendale, that we have the appropriate amount of resources and personnel to staff those events. One of the best examples I can give is that explosive canines is always one of the requests we get. Everybody wants to have a bomb sweep done at their respective venue. So in order for us to be able to meet the overwhelming demands of those requests, we have to request additional resources from our local, state, and federal partners. And in doing so, we get an outstanding turnout and support at the federal level to be able to accomplish this. So we will have direct integration and coordination with cities of Glendale, Scottsdale, while they're still working the Waste Management Open and the Barrett-Jackson car auction, as well as the other supporting agencies in the East Valley that are helping to fulfill with staffing and resources as well.
I'm glad you asked that question. I asked it at Valley Metro. Just all the coordination and the command team, and I had a little bit more details there in the sense of how everybody comes together. I think they're at Fire Command Center, and then everybody is out in the field, and if something goes wrong, then we have people in the center to make it happen. That's my understanding. Okay.
And the next slide is a snapshot, an overview of the process that the Phoenix Police Department utilized for developing a very robust and comprehensive staffing plan. Obviously, we had some challenges with numbers of people that we have available, and we wanted to be much more strategic and thoughtful in our approach. We identified through gap analysis of our after-action reports from the Super Bowl in 2015 that there were areas and opportunities for us to be able to tighten this up a little bit, and we were able to do that with this go-round. So again, the City of Phoenix Police Department, along with the fire, we are part of a coordinated regional public safety effort. And the plan that the police department put together was developed with no impact to citywide patrol squad staffing. And I think that's very important to note that the response that you get and the number of officers we have in the patrol precincts today will be the same as it is once Super Bowl events go into operation. We were able to identify resources that would not impact or have an adverse impact on our community response. We identified some collateral duty personnel that are able to be deployed to maximize their response capabilities or provide a particular skill set that we may need during an operational period for the Super Bowl, but will otherwise be assigned to their normal day jobs when they're not needed for the event. The police department is committed to leveraging our technologies to support the public safety operations, both in the field and in the downtown area. Examples of this would include the enhancements that we were able to make to the city's downtown camera project to upgrade critical infrastructure cameras over the past year, as well as the inclusion now of an unmanned aerial system program that provides us with drone technology to be able to help us better manage some of these open airspace events. And with that, I'll turn it over to Chief Kreis.
Thank you, Commander Lee. So for the fire department, our objectives are to provide safety and security for community members and visitors, a safe environment and a secure environment for the host these events, and a framework for collaboration and information sharing among stakeholders and throughout the region. How we achieve this is the important question. It's not complicated, but it's a tremendous amount of work. And it's through planning and collaboration. We've been working on this for over a year, building plans and bringing in stakeholders. It's about operations, it's about focusing on these objectives, dedicated resources that are tailored to providing the great emergency services that visitors and residents of Phoenix would expect to the vast number of events that come along with Super Bowl 57. It's about logistics and being prepared to provide a timely and well-managed support for the mission as established above. It's about leadership and management, and our public safety incident management team is built and ready for Super Bowl 57. Everyone is involved. To your point, Councilwoman Stark, we have been working extraordinarily closely with our Phoenix regional partners throughout the automatic aid system, and we are absolutely ready to go for Super Bowl 57. Couple of concluding points. So we talked about the incident management team getting ready to go. Commander Lee reflected on how the MAC operation works, so I won't revisit that. But I will leave these closing comments. The City of Phoenix and the Homeland Defense Bureau, Phoenix Fire Department, Phoenix PD, and our amazing partners that we have an international reputation for excellence in terms of management. This reputation has been underscored by our ability to manage large-scale events, planned and unplanned. As it relates to Super Bowl, we have a long history of distinction throughout the nation, and most of our command officers and leaders on the Phoenix Fire Department, Police Department, and leaders throughout the City of Phoenix have worked on and around past Super Bowls. Early in the planning phase, we acknowledged our history, while at the same time recognizing that success is not entitled. We know this Super Bowl will be bigger than ever before, and we'd have to build upon past success to rise to the challenge. As we approach the final weeks of planning, we're proud to report that our team has exceeded our expectations as they relate to planning, collaboration, logistics, administration, and operational readiness. And with that, I'll open up to any questions.
Do we have any questions?
I have some questions.
Councilwoman Ansari, or Vice Mayor?
Thank you. Thank you all. I first off, I didn't have any questions about the public transit piece, but I just wanted to say thank you to the team that's been working on it. As someone who's a big proponent of free public transportation, it's really exciting that we're going to be offering this for the Super Bowl that day. So thank you. I know the fundraising could not have been simple. And then I also want to thank Phoenix PD and Fire and our local and national partners that put in what I'm sure is countless hours creating this plan. It's very impressive that all of this capacity is able to be added around the event areas without an impact to citywide patrol squad staffing and response capabilities. I was hoping someone could dive a little bit deeper into how that's possible, just to explain for residents, and are there any other PD capacities that will be affected around this time?
Thank you, Vice Mayor, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee. So a couple of things that we did. Again, we had an emphasis on being very strategic and intentional in our application of personnel this go around. We did so by first taking a look at what resources we would have that would be normally on duty during that day that are in the specialty capacity. So our tactical resources, where we could bring some of our bicycle teams and things that are specialty resources that would not be impacting the normal patrol squads. Next, we went to our investigative bureaus. We were able to identify some of the, in fact, a good portion of our investigations bureau was where detectives were reallocated away from what their normal assignment was to be able to help staff some of these critical positions, and they actually make up the bulk of where the personnel came from for us to be able to fill in all of these security posts. Additionally, we leveraged resources in-house in our Reserve Bureau, and we were able to staff a large portion of positions based on the commitment that we have from our well-established Reserve Bureau. We also look to leverage our civilian and support staff personnel for those non-law enforcement specific positions where we could plug them in anywhere that they were able to. And that, again, took a huge burden off of some of those staffing assignment positions. So we went around the entire department and looked for opportunities where we could pull resources for a short period of time and be able to, in some cases, split their shifts between Super Bowl related efforts and still doing their normal day job, all with the intention of not impacting the normal squad, patrol squad resources that are going to be first responders, still answering those 911 calls and still delivering the same level of customer service and security that our citizens expect.
Mm-hmm. Understood. Thank you. That's very helpful information. I also know you mentioned that this presentation has been shared number of times to community groups. One, as the councilwoman for a piece of downtown and living in downtown, there has been, I think, some growing concern around recent shooting incidents and, crime in the downtown area. We just had a big community meeting on Saturday where over 60 residents downtown showed up. And I think a lot of the questions do, of course, have to do with the planning around a major national event like the Super Bowl. Can you tell me a little bit about what the reception has been like when you have been giving these presentations and informing residents and downtown business owners about what your plans are?
Vice Mayor, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee. So the meetings that either myself or my staff have attended, I know that Zandon and his staff have done a tremendous job of community outreach over the past multiple weeks here. But some of the questions and the feedback that come through us is the impact of traffic. How do I access my business or my house? And those are ones that we have really shared a lot of mapping and what the timeline and the breakdown is going to look like for some of those traffic restrictions and closures. We also want to be able to provide options to the community and the residents so that they know how they can get around during all of this activity. There has been a few folks that have asked, what the additional security might look like. So we try to share with them some of the additional resources that we have at our disposal. Again, whether they be local, state, or federal resources that we have requested. all with the clear intent to be able to surge our capacity and resources to an affected area during the peak times when these events are happening. So again, as part of our effort to be very strategic, we want to make sure that we have the right number of resources in the right location at the right time to support the expected attendance at each of these events.
Okay, thank you so much. I do think this public safety plan is very comprehensive, and I know it was no small feat to get here. And especially, again, within the backdrop of recent incidents in downtown and around the entire country, it is my utmost priority that our residents and guests feel safe, especially during a mega event like the Super Bowl. So thank you again. I'm really looking forward to a fun and, most importantly, safe Super Bowl week.
Thank you.
Chairwoman?
Yes, Councilwoman O'Brien?
Thank you so much. You talked about the traffic being of concern to residents and that you were able to share mapping with them to show, the best street flow and when restrictions would be in place. Is that information available on a website?
Councilwoman O'Brien, one of the things that as part of our planning initiative is really a know before you go communications program. So this will reside not only on the city's website, but on the Super Bowl Host Committee website. We'll have maps which have the preferred driving directions. It'll have information on which streets are closed, where to park, what's the best walking path. So all of that know before you go information will be available. And then the other thing that we'll be doing in conjunction with the host committee and our communications office is providing real-time updates as they occur. So we will have communications and public information staff at our social media headquarters, and they'll be pushing out real-time information as well.
Thank you. That'll be very helpful to citizens and visitors who are not only coming to the Super Bowl events, but who are trying to navigate their way through the city to maybe deal with their everyday lives. So I appreciate that. And finally, I just want to thank all of our neighbors who are helping us, again, our regional partners as well as the federal partners. Most importantly, I want to thank all of the men and women in the Phoenix Police Department who are working this event. We could not do this without them, including our Phoenix Police Reserves. This is a monumental effort, and really do appreciate all those who will be working overtime and in duties that they don't normally work. So, and thank you all for today's presentation. Thank you, Chairwoman.
Thank you. I have a question. What happens to Mass on Sunday at St. Mary's Basilica since Monroe is closed? Does Mass continue?
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, yes, we have been working very closely with the Basilica, making sure that we can still maintain normal operations for them. They've been great partners in this whole planning effort, and we do have a traffic plan in place to be able to support that activity.
Okay. I was like, that was the first thing I saw. I was like, oh, how is this going to affect parishioners or the Basilica? I know they have their garage, which will probably need to be looked at for safety reasons, but they have their garage, but that fills up quickly and people use street parking. So I was like, ooh, let's see what happens. Well, we could probably have one outside too. That was all, and what I did wanted to say is I'm very grateful and thankful for our police department and our fire department, because I know you're number one, and you have gone through a Super Bowl before, and we've gone through several other events, so you know, you have experience. And so I know that to let the Super Bowl committee know that they're in great hands, and if there's any incident, they know what to do. So I want to thank you for your service. I want to thank you for what you're doing and all the men and women that are out there supporting our city. So appreciate you, and I'm grateful for you. Thank you. Item number 4. As they move, I will talk about item number 4. 24th Street and Broadway, Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, parcels and redevelopment. CED, Chris Mackey will be introducing this item.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, we are here to seek your guidance today on release of a request for proposal, relating to 24th Street and Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. This is a culmination of a 2-years-long effort led by Council District 8 in strong partnership with Community and Economic Development, Planning and Development, Neighborhood Services Department, our Parks Department, and our Streets Department. We've all been working closely together on this. With me today, Zandon Keating, Deputy Director over Community and Economic Development, Sophia Mastakina, Program Manager in Community and Economic Development, and Gretchen Wolf, Special Projects Administrator for Economic Development. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Keating to walk you through the proposal. Zandon?
Thank you, Chris. Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, first we're going to start with a little bit of background on the site. So this is a 12.1 acre property at the southwest corner of 24th Street and Broadway Road, also known as Martin Luther King Boulevard. It had the northern, approximately 1/3 of the site is Zone C2, a commercial, intermediate commercial zoning district. And then there's single family zoning on the southern, approximately 2/3 of the site, R16. Zoning. There's been a number of planning efforts on in the area, and specifically related to this property in some cases. So there's 2 additional overlays, as well as it lies within a redevelopment area. So a little bit on the timeline of the procurement, what we've been through so far. So we started with a request for information back in March of 2021. So when that was issued, ultimately that was presented to the community, the results of that in October of that same year. This community is very, very engaged, has really thoughtful responses and information that they're looking for, and really very pointed amenities that they're looking for and things that they need for their community. So this ultimately led to a much broader outreach and community outreach process that was primarily led by the Council District 8 office, but in partnership with all of the departments that Chris just mentioned a minute ago. That really intensified that process in the fall of last year. Ultimately, I'll talk a little bit more about the specifics of what we did through that process and some of the results of that process in just a minute. This will all lead to, hopefully, what staff anticipates issuing the RFP in the spring of this year, followed by the proposer, the panel evaluation of the proposals, and then ultimately a recommendation that will be taken back out to the community in the summer of this year, ultimately leading to bringing back the recommendation to council later in 2023. So a little bit more about that outreach, of course, following up the RFI process that took place in 2020 through 2021. That really led to a number of community meetings, presentations that took place starting the summer of this past year and going into the fall. Ultimately, a big piece of that was some focus groups. So we held the Council District 8 office, along with the city staff, held 4 focus groups. They were focused on affordable housing, on commercial, specifically retail opportunities, cultural assets for the community, and then health and wellness were the 4 categories. There was also a community survey that was implemented by the council office. They used every resource they could really think of to get it out to folks, everything from social media to handing out flyers door to door. They were working with community or neighborhood groups, churches, other community organizations to push this out as well and get as many responses back as possible. Ultimately, there were 286 responses to the survey, and the results of the focus groups, the other community outreach, the surveys, all of that was presented to the community in November of last year. I'm going to now pass it to Sophia to talk more about the results of the survey.
Thank you, Zandon. Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the subcommittee. As Zandon mentioned, community input was a crucial aspect of this RFP process. We wanted to be very sure about what the community wanted to see developed on the site, and that the project that eventually comes out of this is able to serve and support the surrounding community. Overall, the feedback we received from all the community meetings and the focus groups and the survey were fairly consistent. So focusing on the results of the survey first, the resounding top priority for the site is to bring a grocery store in the area to supply the neighborhood with healthy food options. Now, given the size of the site and the other uses that the community wants to see, which I'll get into shortly, one grocery concept that could work well here is a smaller scale neighborhood market that could still provide the healthy food options to the community while leaving enough room on the site for other uses. Going along with the health and wellness topic that was consistently brought up during the outreach, the second top priority that came out of the survey was medical services. Some of the ideas that were floated during discussions were uses such as minute clinics, urgent care clinics, and other providers that can serve the population and provide healthcare services that meet the social and cultural needs of the community. The survey also had the option to write in additional uses that respondents would want to see on the site. The top option was sit-down restaurant, which was mentioned 32 times in the responses we received. In the comments regarding the restaurants, there was a focus on that there should not be fast food or drive-through restaurants, but rather places where folks can gather and sit and enjoy a meal together. In that same vein, the next option mentioned was entertainment, which came up 25 times. Again, the goal is to have places where the community can gather, and some examples that came up were things like bowling alleys, arcades, skating rinks, and other indoor recreational activities. And finally, there is a desire to see retail spaces in the project with a special focus on small and local businesses. As I mentioned, the feedback we received was fairly consistent in that the top priority for the site is to bring in healthy grocery store and medical services to the area, and then places for community members to gather. And there are also additional elements that were important to the community that they indicated should be considered in the development of this proposal. And some of those key elements are outdoor spaces that can be used for recreation or just places for folks to sit down and enjoy their day. Again, that there would be no fast food on the site, that there would be an opportunity to incorporate some kind of nod to the cultural heritage and history of the surrounding neighborhood, and also capitalizing on the site's location on Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. That the site provide family-friendly options and opportunities for small businesses and entrepreneurs, community services like youth support services and neighborhood resource centers, community garden as another way to bring fresh produce to the area, and finally, the incorporation of art and artistic elements. This was often brought up in conjunction with the homage to the cultural heritage of the area. And so, with all these great ideas that the community gave us and with a clear direction of where this project should go, this brings us to our desired project. We're looking for a mixed-use commercial development project that incorporates the top uses identified by the community and preferably some of those additional elements that I just went through as well. But really the main focus here will be that the grocery store to bring healthy food options to the neighborhood, medical and wellness services, and some options for community members to gather and spend quality time with their neighbors, with their friends, and with their families. And with that, I'll pass it over to Gretchen Wolf to talk about the procurement aspect of this process.
Thank you. Good morning, Madam Chair and committee members. I'm just going to quickly go through the minimum qualifications for this RFP. We're proposing that there would be two, one to address experience to ensure we get a qualified developer to take on this site, and then the qualification that they offer, they provide the combination of cash and public benefits needs to equal or exceed the appraised value. Part of the site was purchased with Community Development Block Grant funds, so we will have to comply with those regulations in doing that evaluation. For the evaluation criteria, we are proposing our standard development formula with the concept to activate the site, getting the heaviest points. Again, that is where we're looking at what are they proposing to do with the site, the return to the city, and then their qualifications. This is the evaluation criteria the panel will use when reviewing the proposals. We expect the panel to include not just city staff, but also community members from the area, as well as representatives from the commercial development community.
There's a question. Councilwoman Stark.
So I think this is great. I just want to make sure, have you done a recent rooftop count because I always worry we have these lofty ideas, but if we don't have the rooftops there, then we may not really get anyone interested in looking at the parcel. I know that along North 32nd, when ULI did their study, one of the things they emphasized was rooftops, and I remember at the time Councilman Gates actually got some rezones with regards to multifamily, which really then got people interested in the area, including small businesses, sit down, and health providers. So I just want to make sure we're not going down a road where we might disappoint the community because we don't have the rooftops. So I don't know if you've done that analysis. I'm sure you have.
Madam Chair, Councilman Stark, we have been doing a very deep dive on this area for the last number of years. In fact, this is one of the areas of the city where we see the most single-family residential permits being issued. So 3 years ago, we couldn't have stood here, much like 32nd Street, we couldn't have stood here and told you that we are optimistic that we'll get some good responses on this front. But now with the new rooftop counts, with the additional plats, the properties that have been platted, moving things forward, we are very optimistic that we will see some good responses. On top of that, when we issued the request for interest 2 years ago and got responses back, one of the developers did respond with a grocery store and had a grocery store in tow that would be interested in being there. So much like other areas of the city, we're seeing the growth start to be able to deliver what the balance of the community wants on the retail front. We also are being very transparent with the community and have let them know that this may be more than one RFP that we have to issue to get the project that they are interested in.
Perfect. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
And Madam Chair, we have had a wonderful time working with the community over the last couple of years in the efforts led by Council District 8. We've had some very lively meetings that have led us to, I believe, is a good place where the community feels comfortable moving forward with this city-owned site that we've owned since the early 1990s. And with that, we would recommend this committee move approval to the City Council to issue a request for proposal for the property at 24th Street and Broadway or Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. With that, we're happy to take any questions.
I would, Councilwoman Ansari, do you have a question?
No, just comments, so we can wait till after the motion.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I just wanted to commend Councilmember Garcia and his team on this. He is unfortunately not on the subcommittee, but I know they put in a lot of hours for this property over the last 2 years in particular. Much of this was mentioned during the presentation, but I know that they spent a lot of time learning the history of the neighborhood, set up community meetings, one-on-ones with constituents, surveyed the neighborhoods, and more. And the community was very clear what they wanted to see, and the fact that they were part of this process is really exciting. I also think it's extremely smart to be utilizing and activating our own city-owned land in the meantime while we wait for a little bit longer timeline that the RFI and the RFP processes can take. I know the District 8 team has been instrumental in supporting a group who is activating the lot with a temporary farmers market. So just want to give them a huge congratulations, and I hope that we can look towards other activation opportunities on our other city-owned parcels throughout the city of Phoenix. So congratulations to District 8, and I'd be happy to make a motion or if somebody else wants to, but thank you so much.
Go ahead. Who would like to make the motion?
Move to approve.
And I will second.
There's a second. I do want to say, just for discussion purposes, I believe this is what I know from the community. This is the Four Corners that has been, you have been working on. They called it the Four Corners. For someone that knows that area really well and worked in that area, it has been abandoned or empty for, let's see, I'm 8 years at Phoenix College. I was over there. So about 15, 20 years. And the promises were then to a grocery store. and retail. And you have on the four corners, you have that large empty lot, then the City of Phoenix building, and then two other empty lots in Church's Chicken. And I also got a ticket there. That's how I know it really well, going to South Mountain and working. So this is great news to hear for the community, and I want to commend the Councilman Garcia and the team for the work that they have done to lift this and make it happen. And so those are my comments, knowing the history of that area. So there's a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any nays?
Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
So as the last item, and I'm going to move it quickly, approval of historic preservation exterior rehabilitation grants. I know that there's a request for approval of 12 historic preservation exterior rehabilitation grants.
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, yes, due to time constraints, we can dispense with the PowerPoint presentation, but just for the public watching at home, as you stated, it's a request for approval of 12 historic preservation exterior rehabilitation grants for the 22-23 fiscal year. That totals $185,695. In exchange for the grant funds, the property owner agrees to sell the city a 15 to 20-year conservation easement to protect the historic character of the property's exterior. With that, staff's happy to answer any questions or request a motion to approve the exterior rehabilitation grants.
Is there a motion or any questions?
I have no questions, but I'd be happy to make a motion. So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Doesn't sound like anything. This is awesome. This is great for the historic preservation group and neighborhood. So all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any nays? Motion carries. Thank you. I believe I don't have call to the public. All right, meeting adjourned. Future agenda items, sorry. Before I reverse, sorry. I reverse verse.
I do have just one future, and I don't think it really needs to be a discussion, but I would be curious in getting a report on the activity at the convention center since, post-pandemic. Just curious to see. I noticed last week when I was walking around, there were a lot of people with badges on, which means the convention center's back. So I'd like to get a little report on what's happening there. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. And then the other item earlier, but I can follow up. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, from the subcommittee.
Already paid for by the user. ADOT will be installing a fiber line in one of those ducts, then renting out the other ducts. Once we get the micro duct installed between pole boxes, what